Hey, what's up, Raider fans? This is Vinny here again for another edition of Raider Weekly on the YouTube channel here. 5 things to take from this regular season Week 3 game against the Tennessee Titans. They traveled over to Tennessee. They played a very, very low-scoring game. Got it out a 17-10 victory in Nashville. Their second straight year they walk out of Nashville with a win. The Raiders are 2-0 on the road. This is the first time they started off the season winning the first 2 road games. 2-0 on the road for the first time they started off a season like that since 2002. Make that a good omen because that was the last time they made the playoffs. And according to the Elias Sports Bureau, it is only the 10th time in franchise history they started off winning the first 2 road games. And as I said, if you believe in omens, this is a good omen because the previous 9 times they made the playoffs. I mean, it wasn't your run-and-shoot offense. It wasn't your high-scoring game that they had against the Saints and the Falcons offensively. However, though, they did enough just to win the game. I mean, the defense came through this time. Very important that their defense came through. I mean, we'll get into that a little bit later on. However, here it is. Let's start off right. Number 5. One thing that, I mean, before I really get into the top 5 things, there are still things that concern me, but then there are a lot of things I can praise, you know. You know, like how the running game has been with Rashard and Washington. I mean, just really carrying. I mean, because Murray did not have that impressive of a game this week. He did have that big touchdown run early on, but he really did very little afterwards. But let's move on, though. Number 5, penalties. I mean, they trimmed down a little bit on the penalties still, but they still took some penalties that either backed up the team, that stalled a drive. I mean, there's one in the second quarter that was taken away. You can say what you guys want about that. That was a borderline call. I mean, I'm not going to go and complain about that holding call that negated the touchdown right after they got the fumble, right after the Raiders got the fumble recovery. I mean, but unfortunately, that backed them 10 yards up, and they had to go and settle for a Sebastian Janikowski field goal. But the penalties, I mean, they were concerning because they did do some damage. Probably prevented the Raiders from getting a couple first downs. Prevented the Raiders from, as I said, getting that 1 touchdown. However, though, they didn't make the bonehead decisions that the Titans did when the Titans were driving for that final, on the final drive. They're trying to tie the game up. I mean, you got to the 4th yard, and their offensive lineman made a very stupid mistake, getting a late hit, backing them up 15 yards. They thought they had the tying touchdown. Holding pass interference against Andre Johnson, offensive pass interference. I mean, he didn't make those bonehead mistakes this time around, but I don't know if you guys are going to continue to, but you guys got to try to cut down on those penalties because they can make a difference, and they did make a difference last week. But the penalties, I mean, they turn them down, but they're still concerning. That's why they're at number 5. Number 4, the improvement of the defense. I mean, okay, you know what? They improved a little bit. They made bigger plays. They were able to get off the field on 3rd down. Say what you want. Okay, it's Tennessee. I mean, they do have a tough game this Sunday against Baltimore, but you know what? Baltimore themselves struggled against Jacksonville. So you can't take your opponent lightly on that. And they did a little better. They toned down the yards. I mean, looking at it, 396 yards total they gave up. So that's still a lot of yards. But they didn't give up 500, but they barely came close to giving up 400. Just a little shy of it. But however, though, they did make some good plays. I mean, Raider Nation, we were hard on Sean Smith last week. This week he did a little better. He got an interception, a very key interception, by the way, because it looked like they were going to go for driving the way they were going to drive for a touchdown at that point early in the fourth quarter, but Sean Smith made a great play. I mean, Reggie Nelson committed. I mean, Reggie Nelson had an interception in that game, and that one I don't get. He was not out of bounds. That right before halftime, I gotta complain about that. I don't know what the problem was. He was not out of bounds. I think the referee stopped that very quickly. He could have went for a pick six at that point. It looked like he was on his way. On his way for a pick six. Did not look like he was out of bounds. Did not look like they were going to get him. I mean, they came close to tackling him, but the ref stopped the play. But that was a whole fiasco itself. The Titans were lucky right there that did not go for a pick six. And they were lucky, too, that this clock was a malfunctioning clock, because that actually saved them from possibly giving up 3 more points in that right before halftime, prevent Janikowski from possibly having another field goal attempt to make it 20-3 at halftime. I mean, there's still some concerns. I mean, you gave up. You got to learn that. I mean, you did good. The defense did good stopping the run, like, in between the hash marks, but they still can. But most of the rushing yards that they allowed DeMarco Murray to have 114 yards. Okay, Murray's a good premier running back. However, though, you got to stop the running game from, you still got to stop them from when they go outside the numbers, going to the sidelines, because that's where most of those big runs came from. But, however, though, I was pretty pleased with the defense improvement a little bit. They're only going to get better. I mean, they forced 3 turnovers. Unfortunately, though, the offense really didn't do too much, because they only were able to get 3 points out of those turnovers. I mean, he got 5 turnovers the entire season so far. 5 takeaways. Okay, and he had 3 of them in this game. I mean, say what you want, whether it's the Titans or not, but they still played a better game. And I could not have asked for more. Maybe they could do a little better against Baltimore. Maybe not allow too many big runs. I mean, you got your hands full. You got Forsett. I mean, Flacco is a good quarterback. They got to deal with Steve Smith. That should be an interesting matchup. But the defense, I still would give them a solid 7.5 out of 10, maybe 8 out of 10, just for being able to get off the field on third down, just for committing to creating turnovers, putting this team in position to win the game. And they did put this team in position. They made a big stand towards the end of the game, stopped them on fourth down. And by the way, that was not a pass interference call. I don't care what anyone says from other teams. They both were tangled. They both slipped. Both were going for the ball. TJ Carey had his eyes on the ball. That was not pass interference. The Raiders walk out. It's a defense that was the Achilles heel the first 2 games. They made up big time this game. Number 3, the running game. I mean, Latavius Murray, he did not have flashy stats. He only had 37 yards rushing on 10 carries. However, he has been, this year so far, inside the red zone, he's been able to get a rushing touchdown in all 3 games. That I really can't complain about. He's able to still, when you get close, he's still able to feed him the rock. He can get into the end zone. However, though, he has not had a 100-yard rushing game yet. And that does have a little concern. I mean, he had that, as I said, he had that big run. Only one run, the first run of the game, 22 yards for that touchdown. But other than that, he was held to 15 yards on his next 9 carries. The defense of the Titans were able to stop. However, though, you got to give credit to where credit is due. And you have to start looking at Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington. I mean, Washington had a couple big runs that set up that Seth Roberts touchdown. I mean, set up that Seth Roberts touchdown right before halftime. That one, of course, was the essential game-winning touchdown, because little did we know that they would not score after that the rest of the game. But the running game, once again, they got like over 100 yards. Looking at it right now, that is, looking at the total yardage on here, that is 123 yards rushing. 123 yards rushing collectively as a team. I mean, as a team, they collectively average 161 yards rushing throughout the season. I mean, that's still a little under the average, but they're still, the running game has vitally much improved, even though, as I said, Latavius Murray has not had a 100-yard rushing game yet. But you got three good running backs. I mean, you got the fullback, Jameis Olawale. I mean, get him in. I mean, he only had 2 yards rushing. I mean, I'm not going to. But you know what? He's just a fullback, though. But he can still play. You can still feed him the rock if you need to. And unfortunately, he is our full-time fullback now, because we all heard about the news of Marcel Reese being released, and that one's going to be, I'm going to be getting emphasize more into that in a couple of days when I release news and notes. All right, so number 3, the running game, continuing to show some promise. Number 2, the receiving game. I mean, you had Crabtree 100 yards receiving in this game. However, he didn't get touchdown, but he did made some pretty big catches. I mean, you saw Derek Carr just escaping, that when he escaped being sacked, he's able to throw, was it 20-something yards to get that first down. That was on a 3rd down play too. I mean, he had a couple of, I mean, he even used Richard a couple times. I mean, Cooper only had 62 yards receiving on 4 catches. And I mean, I like the receiving game, and I like Cooper. He's a good wide receiver. He had a chance to be one of the best wide receivers when it's all said and done, but he has bad case of the drops. I mean, he dropped, I think, 3 or 4 balls that could have easily been first down or could have gotten some yardage. I mean, Cooper led the league last year in drop catches. That's something that he has to work on. But still, I can't really complain too much, because he made some key catches in the game. I mean, they went right to him on the first play as they went against Parrish Cox, who is the Titans version of Sean Smith, getting burned. And he got burned a few times. And of course, as I said, Seth Roberts, I mean, got to get him more involved. I mean, he's able to have 2. I mean, he essentially had 2 of the biggest touchdown catches so far this season. Both of them directly had something to do with winning the game, because he had that touchdown at the end of the Saint game. I mean, yeah, you had to go for 2-point conversion, throwing it to Michael Crabtree, but he essentially either had a game-tying or set up a game-winning touchdown. And this game, and the game against the Titans, he had that touchdown catch right before halftime. That was, as I said, essentially the game-winning touchdown catch. Because little did we know that they were the final points the Raiders would score in that game. So you got to get Roberts a little bit more involved in this one. But as I said, the receiving game is not a bad thing. That's no longer an Achilles heel. You have 2 really great wide receivers in Crabtree and Cooper, and you have 1 really good wide receiver in Seth Roberts. I mean, you got Clive Walford. I mean, There's a couple catches that he should have caught, but then he did make a big catch, a couple of big catches too. I mean, I felt bad for him because he had a touchdown catch that should have been a touchdown catch, but got wiped out by a holding call. I mean, he's somebody that I expect big things from still this season. I mean, I don't think he's going to get 1,000 yards receiving, don't get me wrong, but I still expect him to be a big part of this offense. And he's showing flashes that he can be a big part of the offense. And last but not least, number 1, the offensive line play. Continuing, I mean, yeah, they made some mental errors with the holding calls. One of the holding calls and stuff, but they still doing a good job of protecting Carr. I mean, you're going to back him up 10 yards. Carr doesn't get sacked. I mean, it could be worse. Carr could take a sack for 15, 20-yard loss. So in that case, okay, you know what? You're holding calls, you're protecting your quarterback, but still sets the Raiders up for a bad situation. But at the same time, I like how they're protecting Carr. I mean, Carr was able to escape. I mean, yeah, Carr is a pretty athletic quarterback. He was able to escape too. Excuse me, but they only allowed 2 sacks so far this season. And really, that game against the Titans, that was the first time a defensive player was able to get a hold of him. Because the other sack against Atlanta, I mean, technically he was considered sacked because he ran out of bounds. I guess one of the plays he ran out of bounds, he didn't get to the line of scrimmage. But they still consider that a sack against you. And if I was a defensive player, I'd be glad, and I was around in coverage and the guy just ran out of bounds, I'd be glad to get credit with a sack. So that's a catch-22 right there. But the offensive line has been continuing, and I think the offensive line is starting to push through, creating some big holes for players like Washington, Jalen Richard. And the one thing, as I said, they created a hole in that 22-yard run by Murray on that first drive of the game for that first touchdown of the game. I mean, there are things that they could work on, like taking the mental mistakes with the penalties, the false starts, the holding calls. But so far, I still give them a solid. They've still been solid all year. I mean, yeah, they've had to shuffle a couple times. I mean, Menelik Watson missed last week, and then he left again with another groin injury. So that one thing is just staying healthy for the offensive line. But we saw what they can do when they are healthy. Most of them are healthy, and guess what? We see what they can do. I mean, they're giving Carr all day to pass. I mean, Carr's only thrown one interception. That was against the Titans a couple days ago. But as I said, overall right now for the Raiders, I mean, you've seen some improvement by the defense. Some improvement in the penalties, but most of them are also mental mistakes. I like how the receivers are playing. The running game, I mean, Murray, of course, has potential to do better. We saw that last year. He had over 1,000 yards rushing, I should say. But overall, so far in the first 3 games, 2-1. I mean, I know we were 2-1 last year before eventually finished 7-9, but we haven't done it. It's been a while since we actually been able to talk about the Raiders being over 500. Let's try to keep it over 500 this week. It's going to be a tough game against the Baltimore Ravens. It's going to be another early 10 a.m. game on CBS. But I really don't think the Baltimore defense is as good as they once were. I mean, yeah, they have Suggs still, but they're not as flashy as what they were, let's say, 5 years ago. And, of course, they are not anywhere near as what they were back in 2000. The Raiders can play the game. I mean, there's no reason they can't stop that Baltimore offense either. For defensive wise, there's no reason why our defense can't stop Baltimore's offense. All right, but it's gonna be a tough game still though, because they never won in Baltimore. Last year was only the second time they ever beaten the Ravens. But everything's gotta be they gotta get rid of the mental mistake, cut down on the mental mistakes, cut down on all these penalties, stop the run. I mean, make bigger plays. I mean, Emerson still got to continue to make big plays. Hopefully, we can see both Nelson and Sean Smith improve. Pass rush needs to get going. Only 3 sacks in 3 games. I mean, this is a team that should expect to get more than 3 sacks. However, though, with that, I'm going to end this video. Thank you guys. If you guys stood around all this time, thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you like it. Like the page, like on Facebook at Raider Weekly on YouTube, and also follow the Raider Weekly page at Raider Weekly. And once again, to remind you guys, it's the Raiders Week 4 game at Baltimore. That's 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. That's on CBS, folks. And with that, I bid you guys farewell. Have a great week. Go Raiders. Let's make it 3-1 on the year.